All right, I'm talking to my female athletes that are somewhere 40 something to 50 something. And what happens perimenopausal? Can you believe starts 10 years before menopause? So I'm on a mission to kind of biohack my way through menopause. I'm not there yet, but I'm turning 51 next week and I still feel good, but I don't feel like I need to have all these stereotypical menopausal symptoms we hear about. So here's some things that happen that Dr. Mindy Pelz was talking about in her Menopause Reset book. And she's a new one coming out that we're going to dive into next month called Fasting Like a Girl. But just a few pointers: estrogen and progesterone levels start to lower. I think mine did 10 years ago. If you do a Dutch hormone test at least once a year, that's a great way to see what's going on with your hormones over a 24-hour period. Instead of a blood test is just what your hormones are at that moment in time. So I like to look at both. Now, ovaries begin to retire. And this is where I don't understand why doctors never tell us this, that the adrenals take over when the ovaries start to retire. So the ovaries are done. We did our job. We tried to get you pregnant and have children and reproduce. But now the job is handed over to the adrenals to make your sex hormones. So the adrenals are already working super hard. We're already typically stressed and have a lot going on. We have that addicted to busyness, the rushing woman syndrome. And then when our hormones are lower, our cortisol is going up. So we already got a lot going on. So we need to love our adrenals. So if you follow me on Instagram, Low Carb Athlete, I talk about using Laird's superfoods with the mushrooms in my coffee. My coffee creamer has mushrooms in it. I like to use ashwagandha and rhodiola and all these great adaptogens you can throw into your protein shake, coffee, and really add those in each day. Now, fasting, I'm talking a lot about because I, myself included, have fasted too much with a active lifestyle. So if you are a hard charging athlete and premenopausal, you may need to limit that fasting to 12 to 15 hours. Too much of anything can be stress. Remember, acute stress hormesis is acute dose of stress. We recover, rebuild, get stronger. But if it's chronic stressor, that's going to impact our HPA axis system, the adrenals. So make sure we support the HPA axis, adrenals, and liver needs to be supported before we start doing extended fasting, as Dr. Mindy talks about for females, and figure out the right time of your cycle to fast. That we don't want to have that kisspeptin hormone activated that will impact our hormones and slow everything down because we're trying to reduce that stress. So we want to not fast day 21 to 28 or until your day one of your cycle begins, because I know my cycle can be 30 to 35 days, but eating more hormone building foods is grass-fed meat, citrus, and tropical fruits during that time. So that's more in Dr. Mindy's book and in my ebook and my Training Peaks program I write out for my clients that are still cycling, female athletes, add in what is the best time to do everything. So let's see, I always miss the right button to change my slides. So also remember the cortisol, glucose, insulin, thyroid connection. So I think this is really important to look at. I've talked about this a few videos. Thyroid hormones, T4 and T3, are produced from iodine, and we want to look at our full thyroid panel. But the thyroid hormone, as you know, regulates heart rate, breathing, body weight, body temperature, and muscle strength. The hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland via hormone, thyroid releasing hormone, TRH, and releases TSH. Note that's what doctors usually only test is the TSH, which is coming from the pituitary gland, releases thyroid stimulating hormone to the thyroid gland. This is why we want the full thyroid panel. Note to self. So once the TSH message is received, a thyroid creates and releases T3 and T4. And we'll talk about that another time, but the T4 and T3 conversion is in the liver and the gut. So we need healthy liver, healthy gut health to have proper conversion. So the pituitary gland monitors the thyroid hormones in the blood, regulates amount of TSH for balancing hormones. Symptoms of low thyroid, as most of you are already struggling with. Dr. Amy talks about this on her show, The Thyroid Fixer. Cold intolerance, weight gain, fatigue, constipation, decreased heart rate, and fatigue. Now, insulin is made in the pancreas, responsible for regulating the amount of sugar in the blood. So insulin is the key that unlocks the cell to enable sugar to be entered into the cell to be used as energy. So anything excess as sugar, too much in the blood, can cause cell damage, sticky cells. The cell receptor sites get sticky like a jam, jar jam. The outside of it gets all sticky. That's what happens to your cells. And thyroid is impacted with the metabolism is impacted with converting sugar to energy. So thyroid hormones and insulin sensitivity is really something to look at, as well as the role of cortisol. And cortisol, remember, high cortisol can lead to high glucose, and then high glucose is going to lead to high insulin. Insulin, all that is chronic stress, can slow down the thyroid. That reverse T3 is elevated. So we want to look at the whole picture: cortisol, glucose, insulin, and thyroid. It's connected. So Dr. Stacy Sims, I keep talking about because she's got a different perspective, is working on research for the female athlete. So not someone that's sedentary, but someone that's very active. So on menopause, estrogen changes. Our E2 is what we see the difference in our health. Is E2 is estrogen 2 is anabolic hormone. As we lose it, it's more of a challenge to build muscle. As our muscle mass declines, we need to lift heavy weights, prioritize protein, and stimulate protein synthesis with that combination, heavy weights and protein. So then the mitochondria functions also impacted, as estrogen helps mitigate free radicals and produces antioxidants. So as we lose estrogen, gets lower as we age, we will see more free radicals. So we need to get, our body might need a little more support in taking antioxidants through the food that we eat. Now, estrogen inflammation, Dr. Stacy Sims talked about in her book, The Next Level. It can reduce inflammation. Estrogen is an anti-inflammatory or also promotes inflammation. Low estrogens and low progesterone can lead to increased risk of systemic inflammation, which includes joint pain, impaired gut health, that's your microbiome, and fluid retention. Who hasn't experienced that? And then we can have higher levels of iron and leading to iron deficiency and getting anemia when we have our lower estrogens, lower progesterones, because we lose that. And then, so the solution is nutrition, training, and lifestyle habits, as I talk about with the 8 elements of the holistic method. Now, we also see changes in blood sugar management as our estrogen gets lower. This is something I've experienced. Insulin sensitivity is related to our estrogen. So estrogen helps with insulin sensitivity to shuttle blood sugar into our cells for stored energy. Estrogen helps regulate the GLUT4 activity, which pulls glucose into our cells without the need for insulin. So when we have lower estrogen, that equals more need for insulin. We become more insulin resistant. So lower estrogen levels leads to more insulin resistance because we don't have that estrogen around that gives us that insulin sensitivity. So result is insulin resistance with lower estrogen, which equals harder to use, harder to get glucose into the cells, which equals fat storage. So we need to manage our blood sugar levels. That's why I love NutriSense as a premenopausal female athlete, to really monitor my food intake and stress so my glucose does not spike, keeping that glucose 70 to 90 and not going over 120 with meals that I have. So figure out your right macros is what I look at. So also estrogen and appetite. Did you know ghrelin is a hunger hormone? I was thinking Gremlins. Remember that old movie? Gremlins, hunger, those are part of your appetite regulation hormones. Leptin, on the other side, is going to make you feel satiated, full. I don't need to eat anymore. That's a hormone that says, I'm done eating, I'm full. Ghrelin, I want more. So estrogen acts as a leptin, acts on leptin to blunt the appetite. So as we lose the estrogen, it gets lower as we age, that's going to lead to appetite regulation issues, and that's going to lead to increased cravings and decreased satiety. So this is where I feel like protein and fat is a little more important for pre-post menopausal. Dr. Stacy Sims says no to keto, no to fasting, but I'm not saying 50 grams of keto for female athletes. Could be 100 grams a day. I think focusing on the protein and the fat is what we're looking at. Because if you look back what we said, estrogen and blood sugar, estrogen and appetite. So we got all this information here to show that we become more insulin resistant with our lower estrogen. We become more unsatisfied after we eat. We're not as full. So we need to really focus on getting the protein and fat to fill us up. Now, estrogen and mood, I thought was interesting that Stacy Sims talks about in the research. Estrogen increases serotonin, which helps prevent breakdown and increases density and the activity of serotonin receptors in the brain. So as estrogen declines, what happens? We have lower serotonin levels. We have more receptors that are unused, and that's going to lead to more irritability, mood swings, restlessness, and anger. So estrogen, also note that helps with cortisol management. So if we have lower estrogen, we're going to be having higher cortisol, and we might lead to feeling more stressed and feeling as if we're being chased by a lion all the time. So our mood might be a little off. Now, this is where I like to add in heart rate variability testing. So using your Whoop or your Oura Ring, but ideally look at Dr. Jay Weil's research on heart rate variability and their new app to monitor HRV real time with the HANU, HANU, HANU Health app that's coming out. I've been beta testing it, and it matches your breathing exercises where you need to be to help improve your sympathetic to parasympathetic balance. So as we go through menopause, you'll see the heart rate variability. Well, let's say even during your cycle, you'll notice that the HRV will be better, higher in the beginning of your cycle, and then it'll be lower in the later cycle. Progesterone, as it gets lower and estrogen gets higher for some people, that increases your vagal tone. But post-menopause, heart rate variability, because our hormones are more stabilized, we might feel more in sympathetic drive, which is fight or flight. And so we need to really work on our lifestyle habits to, use those breathing exercises, to work on some yin yoga and some meditation and some more nature walks, whatever helps kind of bring you down and relax. But the lifestyle habits to manage that sympathetic drive, that anxiety, and improve our heart rate availability, I think is important as we go through menopause. So muscle breakdown is something I've been fighting. So this is what I love Dr. Stacy Sims and Dr. Gabrielle Leon are saying. Women, we need to eat more protein, spread it throughout the day, and we need to lift heavy things. So estrogen is anabolic, which means building. Progesterone is catabolic, as cortisol is. It breaks us down. So estrogen stimulates lean muscle mass development, and progesterone is catabolic, breaks down carbohydrates to provide energy and breaks down protein into free amino acids. This is to help us create a baby. So progesterone is higher during your late luteal phase where our body's trying to create a baby after ovulation. So really looking at post-menopause when these hormones are lower, we don't have that ability to increase that muscle mass as well. So we got to work harder to avoid that muscle loss. So protein and lift heavy weights. Muscle tone changes, our ability to recover changes. So the solution here is changing the way we fuel, how we train, and how we recover to build and maintain that muscle. So we want to get more power produced. We want our recovery to speed up from those harder workout sessions. So how you train as your 50 is going to be different than your 20, 30-year-old self. So training the same all the time, expecting similar results, you need to reprogram, do a different program. Every 30 days, I change my clients' strength training programs, mix it up. So let's go into the protein, and having protein that has a higher amount of leucine is really important. So triggering that muscle growth, amino acids that make up most of our muscle tissue, that leucine amino acid, as well as isoleucine and valine. But we don't want to just have those alone or just have leucine alone. They need to be an essential amino acid profile altogether. So HIIT training, the hormone changes in menopause, and working on our post-workout recovery is catabolic. So we want to time our protein post-workout within 30 minutes of a session. For females, men can wait 3 hours for their post-workout protein, but women, we need that window right after 30 minutes, 30 to 40 grams with 3 to 4 grams of leucine in that. So looking at the whey protein, or second runner-up I've read in Dr. James' book called Win, to have the beef protein is another option. Also, I like bone broth, but we want to improve that signaling to get the protein synthesis in our muscles. So women, our female athletes, we need that post-workout, have that shake, have some bone broth, mix it up, and just get it in afterwards, because we are fighting cortisol. So we want to lower cortisol and get that with the protein going up. So how to regulate our protein or our hormones, we want to look back at Dr. Mindy Pell's suggest repairing our gut, work on detoxing our liver, which I find everyone's liver is congested when I do their assessment, and strengthen our adrenals. Remember that insulin is controlled by cortisol. Oxytocin and cortisol need to be in balance. So cortisol is up, oxytocin is down. So if you want to lower cortisol, go hug someone, hold their hands, give some love, so that will help that hormone balance. So we want to give love to our adrenals, get those adaptogens in, get some yin yoga, some nature walks, unplug, disconnect. All right, so we also want to detox heavy metals. That's what my hair mineral chest, we'll see what it said on an upcoming podcast, but given some support to your liver, as I eat like dandelion tea, I like to give clients a Quicksilver push catch protocol. Matching that with the full moon cycle with some cell core products is really fun to do. And really working on supporting the drainage systems before we do any of this. All right, so we want to rebalance the estrogen and the progesterone and testosterone levels. Dr. Mindy talks about with fasting in her books is day 1 to 10 for women that are cycling. Estrogen likes fasting here, likes keto, and we can add that keto more keto carnivore days 1 to 10. I think it's important to have more, getting that red meat, getting that iron in the beginning of your cycle. And then we hit around ovulation, days 11 to 15, your estrogen and testosterone are higher. Fasting up to 15 hours is long enough around this time. Toxins are released too quickly. We got to be careful that we don't have a detox reaction. So making sure during ovulation, we're keeping the liver functioning so it can clear out those excess estrogens. So focusing on the microbiome and liver health will help that. And then days 19, towards the end of your cycle, this is what we'll talk to Dr. Mindy about. This is your deload week. This is when you're not fasting more than 12 hours. You're not doing high nutritional ketosis. You can, eat more progesterone building foods, but that can include more of that carnivore red meat that helps. So with that carb timing, looking at for athletes, carb timing, what to eat, getting your protein in, focus on the protein and the fat. For female athletes, I think, you need to look at your carb intake as well. So we focus a lot on here's figuring out your protein, my ideal body weight in grams of protein a day, say, I'm just saying 150, and then you're having, say, 30, 50 grams throughout the day. So 3 meals have 50 grams of protein in them. Then figure out your fat, and then your carbs are going to vary based on your cycle, based on your workouts, and cycling them in and out. So kind of a keto cycle, keto flexibility, you're having carbs more at your evening meal or post harder workout, or you're keeping low carb during the week and then a higher carb day, 1 day a week to keep that metabolic flexibility. So you're good at fat metabolism, you're good at carb metabolism. So just a few notes here on the slides. First meal of the day, breaking your fast, limit your carbs here, increase your protein results in maximizing metabolic flexibility for use of fatty acid fuels. Dr. Leon talks about carbs consumed at the last meal at dinner. I always tell my clients, stop eating 3 hours before bed to optimize your sleep. Have at least the carbs in the evening meal, and Ben Greenfield says this too, save those carbs for nighttime. And this is real food sources carbs, not the garbage. That will have the least impact on your metabolism and appetite and help improve your sleep. So restricting carbohydrates for some people can help your body weight, wellness, and inflammation. But the guidelines for going 20, 50 grams of carbs a day are for more metabolically damaged individuals who have some areas of opportunity and then are not exercising as much as we are typically. So athletes doing more high intensity workouts may want to move your carbs earlier in the day, like your post speed workout, maybe doing tempo, pace work. You want to time your meal with a little more carbs in that time to help replace the muscle glycogen you just used up. So the goal is to avoid pre-workout carbs that are high glycemic. So eating some carbs before a higher intensity workout is suggested by Dr. Stacy Sims, by Keto Gains team, Rob Wolf, and Dr. Leon, that you're timing it depending on your workout. If it's just like 20 grams of carbohydrates, as in my coffee drink with Laird's creamer, for example, then I'll add some Bubs collagen protein and MCT oil, and that won't spike my glucose. So I can still be burning fat, but I have a little bit of popping off of my liver glycogen in the morning from overnight. So having your carbs at nighttime will refill those muscle glycogen stores, and then a little something in the morning when you are doing a higher intensity workout has been recommended. Now, protein building days, you're getting grass-fed, grass-finished when you can, getting pasture-raised eggs, really looking at the toxic-free collagen powders, the protein powders, make sure they're grass-fed and toxic-free. So watch your products and read your ingredients and where they're sourced. So just to review again on protein research that Dr. Gabrielle Leon talks about, acute exercise stimulus and protein ingestion both stimulates muscle protein synthesis before and after resistance exercise. There's mixed recommendations, but generally 0.25 grams of high quality protein per gram of body weight, or an absolute dose of 20 to 40 grams. And Stacy Sims says this as well, the 30 to 40 grams post-workout and spread throughout your day. So rapidly digested proteins that contain high proportions of essential amino acids and adequate leucine are most effective in stimulating that muscle protein synthesis. 1.4 to 2.0 grams per kilogram per day is sufficient for most, striving 700 to 3,000 milligrams of leucine and balanced essential amino acids evenly distributed every 3 to 4 hours across the day. The optimal time diminishes as the post-workout time increases. So females, we need that post-workout protein in that 30 minutes, ideally. So, planning ahead, if I'm doing a 4-hour bike ride on the weekend and 2-hour run on the other day, I need to pack in our cooler something with protein in it. If it's in my shaker bottle, having Kion amino acids, having the Kion capsules, or having a whey protein. Kion has a new unsweetened whey, and there's also Equip, and there's beef protein unsweetened, and then there's other products out there too you can check, but the best quality of protein with the highest amount of leucine is whey. So get a grass-fed whey if you can tolerate it. So going back to pre and post menopause changes, we want to go back to Dr. Stacy Sims' information I've been diving into. Choose heavy lifting, 3 to 6 repetitions, 3 to 5 sets. Doing that 4 days a week. Doesn't have to take a long time. Avoiding higher intensity training if you're too stressed, shorter burst training, 20, 30 seconds is recommended 2-3 times a week. You don't need to do the super long stuff unless it brings you joy, as I love to do a 4-hour fun bike ride, and I like to run an hour and a half to 2 hours on Sundays. I'm not training for anything, but it just is something I like to do. Some days I'm running, some days it's a run walk. I just enjoy it. So adding in 3 days of heavy lifting, at least, to help preserve muscle, improve that bone mass, and keep you stronger, healthier, and fit is something you want to add in for postmenopausal for sure. So you got to look at what happens as we age and how to improve the aging process, and then watch how your parents and their friends age is looking at building that muscle up, having mobility, having balance, having quick reaction times, speed. So eating a high protein diet with the strength training can mitigate the catabolic effects of aging and that sudden lack of estrogen. So eating more protein is what you'll keep hearing over and over again from everyone. The carb ratio is going to vary in the fat, but that's where the individuality comes through. Looking at real food, the ratio of the fat and the carbs and the protein is going to vary per person. In cycling females, it will vary for your cycle. So we need to be aware of that kisspeptin hormone as well. So I've mapped out for premenopausal women, looking at your cycle. There's a chart, follicular to ovulation to luteal to late luteal phase. Dr. Mindy's going to talk about it more in her new book, how to fast when appropriate, how to train, and how to eat is what I created this chart. When to do fasting. So when to do cold plunges, when to do liver detox. You really can map all this out. So it's kind of fun. Making sure you have your drainage pathways opening, I think, is important for all this first. So make sure you're not constipated or having issues. So looking at the estrogen, keto time, progesterone time, carb refeed, that's what we look at. Dr. Anna Kabeka tying in her book in the program here called Menopause, and she has 7-day meal plans. So I strongly suggest Dr. Anna's newest book, put it together with Dr. Mindy's information. And then I'm trying to tie that with Dr. Stacy Sims' info, because she's looking at the research for the female athlete. So the female aging athlete is going to be a slightly different audience than Cynthia Thurlow and Mindy Pels and Anna Kabeka. Their audience might not be, the Ironman marathoner that we're talking about over here. So if you're competing at a high level, training at a high level, we need to adjust this a little bit more per your cycle. Now, we'll go through this more with Dr. Mindy coming up next month, but tracking, if you're still cycling, tracking that information is really important. I use Flow app, but really looking at training peaks and matching your training with your hormones. And we'll talk about, best times of day to fast, right? Is not going more than 12 to 15 hours. Dr. Dan Plu's information talking about for females on his program, when is the best time to do fasted exercise. There's only like 1 week a month that you really should do fasted exercise. So I've been experimenting. If you're not getting faster, you're not getting stronger. Why are we doing fasted exercise? Add in a little bit of calories into that coffee drink, and it actually tastes really good. So I add some collagen, and I add some the coconut sweetener from Laird's. So it's easy way to get a little bit of calories and not stress your body out. So then we want to look at progesterone building days and looking at taking that deload week, last week of your cycle. So that's what we'll talk to Dr. Mindy about next month, but really looking about the female athlete, how we need to change premenopausal exercise. We have a little harder time to keep that muscle on. So we want to make sure we're not doing excessive cardio, focusing on more strength training and more short intensity intervals. Because of the changes of our progesterone and estrogen, and our cortisol might be going up higher, we get in that catabolic state. So we really need to fight the battle of losing muscle by focusing on less chronic cardio and more strength and more all-out sprints, that 10, 20, 30-second sprints. So interesting research on the Endure IQ program for athletes. If you're doing Ironman, that's a great course to take. And their research of energy in the female athlete, really looking at what happens for the female athlete during her cycle and mapping this out. Days 1 to 5 is early follicular, days 6 to 8, mid follicular, late follicular 9 to 13, ovulation plus or minus day 14, and then luteal phase early is days 15 to 20, and then late luteal phase. And really trying to looking at all this information, put it towards your Training Peaks program and figure out the best time of the month for you to do endurance work, that low zone 2 maffetone type of training, when to do more HIIT training, when to really hit that strength training, heavier weights, and really dial it in. So let's dive into that more.